Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, March 31st, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. The Royals played their first home game on Monday and defeated the Minnesota Twins. Before the game, Royals principal owner John Sherman addressed reporters and provided updates on the progress of a new ballpark. Star columnists Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian are here to discuss the Royals and the ballpark. After a break, we turn our attention to the FIFA World Cup and to the smallest country by area and population ever to qualify for the world's biggest sporting event. That's the Caribbean nation of Curacao, and their team is coming to Kansas City for a group stage game against Ecuador on June 20th. The director of Curacao's Football Federation, Gilbert Martina, chatted with us about the excitement his nation is feeling about appearing in the World Cup for the first time, and what Kansas Cityans might expect from the team and the visitors this summer. And then I'll have some final thoughts and tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Hello, Vahe.
Hi, Blair.
Sam, how you doing?
All right.
Opening day at the K. I kind of like the sound of that. I've always liked the sound of opening day at the K. Incredible weather today. We're recording this a couple hours after the Royals defeated the Minnesota Twins 3-1 to even their record at 2-2. Good day all around for the Royals. I want to talk about the game, what we saw here today, but I thought we'd start by discussing what Royals owner John Sherman had to say about the stadium in a pregame press conference. A couple of things I heard surprised me a little bit. How about just general thoughts from each of you on what John Sherman had to say about the future of Kansas City Royals ballpark? Sam, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the same spot we've been in the last 3 or 4 opening days now, where we're asking John Sherman for updates on the stadium, and it's all in this to-be-determined stage. I thought the one difference was that he was more detailed about exactly what is to be determined and what will prompt them to make an announcement on where they want to go. And they need site control and they need the public financing in place. And to me, those two things are obvious, but let's remember, before the vote, they did not have site control at the crossroads. And I think that was a major reason that vote failed. And so I think in part they're learning their lesson, even though we don't anticipate a vote. But also, I think when it's a team that feels like it could go somewhere else at downtown and Washington Square Park doesn't work out, that they need to make sure those things are in place. And it's, I think, a pretty clear indicator that those things are not in place, or they perhaps would have made an announcement by now.
I thought we were narrowing, potential sites, Vahe. It seemed like those weren't narrowed today by what we heard John say.
Yes, not really. And
No, they are narrowed. I mean,
well, not based on what John said.
yes, they publicly want to make it seem like they're still talking to Kansas. North Kansas City's still in play. And look, I'm not saying those things couldn't come back into the fold, but they're not active conversations in the same threshold that Washington Square Park is.
What I was hoping he would clarify today, it was simply that point. Like, can you tell us how many you've gotten down to, really? And he sort of went with an answer he would have given 2 years ago. North Kansas City still in play, downtown, and even the state of Kansas. And Sam's very diligent reporting has demonstrated why a lot of these things really zooming in on downtown option the most. He did not really want to specify anything more within that, but it was interesting. Sam, I think you remembered his answer better than I did, but he did use the term zeroing in on one downtown location. I think the question I asked him was if it was more than one downtown location. He said he wouldn't want to say that, but that they are zeroing in on one.
Yeah, that was when you would ask them specifically just about the downtown options, other multi.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I've specifically been told that there's other downtown locations that would love the Royals to still be considering their sites. So I did find it relevant that he said we're zeroing in on one downtown location. I think that does need to be in the context of your question that was asked. I mean, he still tries and
Correct.
wants Kansas City to be in play and Kansas to be in play, but I mean, in the city for the longest time, including the mayor, have been focused on Washington Square Park when you talk about downtown baseball. And I put all of this into the same bucket, which Blair, you ended up writing about after the Royals rally. And it's that for all these explorations the Royals have had, and as of Thursday will be 2 years since their vote, it still is downtown baseball that like tugs at what John Sherman wants.
I think that, and I think you can feel a little bit of a tone change. You know, he's trying not to do that, I think, but I think we know that that was the spirit of where this started. And I do think it's the undercurrent of it all, even when they'd rather downplay that for whatever leveraging or negotiating purposes they're doing. I think it's the essence of what he sought to do is that.
And although that's not what he experienced over the weekend, this past weekend in Atlanta at Truist Park, where the Royals played the Braves in their season opening series, we learned he was pretty impressed with what he saw there.
Which is not downtown.
Which is not, right. Yeah. It isn't downtown. It's in the outskirts, in the suburbs.
But it's the concept to what you're talking
That's right,
about.
right. Site control.
Yeah, site control, ancillary development around the site. And look, I mean, Blair, I think you said this, pregame when we were talking about this subject, is that some of these sites downtown Kansas City are much more squished than Truist Park and what you could potentially develop there.
Well, one other thing, and pardon me, Blair, if you were going to include this too, but you asked sort of about what stuck out to us the most. And one of the things we found ourselves talking about afterwards was John Sherman being asked about the poll, the survey the Royals took last year, I guess it was, of fans, and noting that the survey where fans most wanted the Royals to be was right here at Kauffman Stadium, which was, I don't know if it was startling to hear him tell us that, but I thought it was intriguing and kind of hard to get your arms around in this whole mix of how they're doing things.
I think it was a survey of season ticket holders and some other fans is how I think it was described. So I can understand if only you're talking to the season ticket holders who come here all the time, who love this. I know that the Star did its own survey a couple of years ago, I think before the vote. And I believe our results were similar. People preferred the Kauffman Stadium over another new stadium. But that was the first, you're right, Vahe, that was the first time I heard John Sherman share results from that study. And to hear that the majority of responses were, we don't want to leave, I don't know what that says about, because it's not going to change the momentum or the progress, but it was just interesting to hear that.
Also with it, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I think what it says is that regardless of where they pick, and I still think it will end up being Washington Square Park, they're going to have to persuade the public of it. And I say have to, not meaning because I don't anticipate there would be a vote, although I could see some city council members wanting to try and force a vote, but have to meaning in order to get your fans on board. I mean, I think what is clear, and I know it doesn't always come across in this conversation, but the fans are really important to John Sherman, and like having their support is important to him. And I think even though you usually don't share something like that says most fans don't want us to do exactly what we're trying to do, I think that's why it's on his mind. I think that is why he shares it, is he's saying we are listening to, we do recognize that a lot of fans want just to stay at Kauffman. And he even went further and says he loves the stadium and wants not an exact replica of it elsewhere. So this has totally always been a location play. It's why the flirtation with Kansas suburbs never made sense to me, and it never made sense to the fans either, because the other piece of that he shared was that came in last in the survey, was potentially moving to Kansas. It was downtown second, North Kansas City third, and that option last. And I absolutely think that probably played a role in their decision to announce that Kansas was not, or that location at the Asperia campus was not going to be where they moved.
I thought also what was interesting about today was he did use some terminology that was a little stronger and more specific than we've heard in the past. I can't remember if he was repeating the words of your question back to you, Sam, or if he used the term like site control first, but he used a couple more specific terms like that. And really, I did think it was very interesting how much he talked about wanting the new stadium to be just like this stadium, almost to the point where he had to walk it back and say, well, not an exact replica. But I thought that was more than he has said about those things. And the reason I bring that up is he has been asked about those things before and not said as much about it. I know we've asked, what do you need to know that you don't know before you make a choice? And he hasn't really answered that very in depth before. And he did speak to it today. So just I like to think this is what you're going to change.
Much better worded question than the way you had asked before. I think is what you're getting.
I think you're saying that I worded it better is what I'm hearing. It's anyway, well let's let the grown up in the room go take back over, Blair. What were you gonna ask?
By saying that we're happily joined by star columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam McDowell, and when they work this out between them, we'll talk about the game, a 3-1 Royals victory that was a continuation of terrific starting pitching for the Royals. Chris Bubich was fantastic today, and they got some pop from the bottom of the lineup. Home runs by the 8-hole hitter Isaac Collins, the newcomer, and then Kyle Isbell, his 2-run homer. So that was all the scoring for the Royals. I think I saw the stat in the post-game notes that the Royals improved to 29-29 in home openers all time, but it had been since 2022 since they had won a home opener. And listen, first games at home, or the reaction to them is always exacerbated, right? I mean, we put too much stock into, but this one does feel good.
It does feel good, although it is funny. I was literally about to look this up right before we started the podcast. I'm working on a story about the bottom of the order in collaboration with Sam McDowell, talking to him about it. But one of the things I was realizing as I'm starting to put it together, or starting to look at it, is that I am 100% certain sometime in the last 2 or 3 years on opening day or the day after, I wrote something about bottom of the order and how encouraging it was to have a big production. And I'm going to find that, and it will be the basis by which you must acknowledge it as one of 162. And, that is one of the things that makes baseball a little bit more challenging in some ways to write about. Each game is such a small sliver, such a small sample set. And why you have to stack things on top of each other before you see something really trending.
Well, one thing we have seen stacked so far is the starting pitching, and that's pretty encouraging. What is this? Is it 9 runs for the Royals this season?
They're for the rotation?
No, well, just 9 runs that the Royals have scored, and they're 2-2.
Oh yeah.
After having scored,
6-3. I'm sorry. 3-3-2. There's 8.
Okay,
Isn't it 8? I think
is it 8? Okay.
It's 9. 0-2-4-3. Yeah, they scored 9 runs.
Oh, they scored 4. Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
less than 2.5 per game.
Yeah.
And they're 2-2, and it's because of the strength of starting pitching. The one performance that they haven't liked so far this year was from their ace, from Cole Reagans in the opener. So, good sign for the Royals.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like this is where the Royals get you. Is their 3-4-5 is better than your 3-4-5, even if their ace might not be better than your ace. And that shows up more in the opening week of the season because 1s are going against 1s and 2s against 2s and so on. And so that, I mean, this is how the Royals, it's not just looking at the snapshot of the opening 4 games and saying, hey, the Royals have been great. It's looking at it, to your point, Blair, you've only scored 9 runs in 4 games and saying, this is how you have to be great. Like, this is the Royals' advantage. They've got a great infield, but the outfield subtracts from that in a way that I don't think that this is a team that's going to be a top 5 to 7 run producing team. They've got to be a top 5 to 7 run preventing team in terms of their rotation. And to me, that is because they got way better depth than any other team in the league.
Something goes hand in hand with that. It's just kind of interesting is that one of the things we hoped to see in the offseason from the Royals was to go get the big bat. right? Whether it's through free agency or trade. And if it was a trade, chances are that it needed to come out of, you want to get something big, you got to, deal from your position of strength, and it would have been a starting pitcher. And I think it's one of those, look at the flip side of how this works. I mean, because they didn't give up that kind of pitching, they are remarkably strong 1 through 5. They've got, as I think John Sherman himself was pointing it out today, three, as he put it, major league starters at AAA that have Bailey Falter in the long man role here. They're in a great spot that way, and I'm suddenly reminded of all the difference it made going from 23 to 24. Remember when they just made the determination that they have to change everything about their starting pitching? They'd acquired Cole Reagans in the middle of 23, but they got Lugo. They did all these things because you guys remember watching their games. These games were over in the 5th and 6th inning too many times, and now they always have a chance in the 6th and 7th inning. So it's a fundamental sort of seismic shift when you've got that.
Bullpen was great today. Certainly let them down on Saturday, the one tough loss that they've taken this year.
Yeah, I mean, despite not having their guys in the bullpen today, I mean, they weren't, Esteves wasn't available. We still don't know whether, I think we'll come in Wednesday and find out whether or not they're going to require an IL stint with him. J.J. Picola said today that they hope to avoid that, but that was pregame before he'd seen the doctors. But Urseg wasn't available and Matt Strom wasn't available. I mean, you went into the season thinking that was 7, 8, 9. And this was a 2-run game, and you needed 3 innings out of your bullpen, and the Twins just got nothing. And so with Schreiber closing it out, and they went to Lynch and before that. So, but to your point, Blair, about the Saturday game, to me, that's where this rotation really comes into play. Is like every team has tough games, but when you wake up the next day and Seth Lugo is starting, you feel better, like getting out of bed.
You have a chance. You feel like you have a chance.
Exactly. And I think all 5 of your guys give you some semblance of that feeling.
Great conversation, as always, with Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian. Gilbert Martina, thank you so much for joining us on SportsBeat KC. And let's begin by having you describe the emotion of Curaçao's qualifying for the World Cup with that scoreless draw against Jamaica on the final day of CONCACAF qualifying. It must have been something else.
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I was in the stadium with some colleagues and board members. And when the referee finally ended the game, it took me some minutes to realize actually what was happened. Then some of the colleagues said, let's go to the pitch to congratulate our players. And on the pitch, then I really started to feel emotions and the tears dropping out of my eyes. So it was a electrifying evening. I call it a divine journey, Blair, because it has been a journey of almost 25 years, almost a quarter of a century, with heights and lows. And finally, that qualification, that was magnificent. And what happened since then for the island, I mean, the players, the inspiration for the youth on the island is incredible. It's actually what we have dreamed about. It has become reality.
The smallest nation in population, about 156,000 people, the smallest in size, about 444 square kilometers, qualifying for the World Cup. It's an amazing story. Give us a bit of the sense of pride that's on the island now.
We're extremely pride. So pride that even, and for me that was the case, but I know for the nation too, even the first game against the Giants of Germany, we do not underestimate our opponents, so we're going to prepare ourselves the best we can. But we're going to play football, Blair, to show the world that Curacao is not at the World Cup just by luck, but that we can play football and to give everything we have to at least qualify for the second round, the round of 32 nations. So that's the objective now. We have qualified, but we're not going to the World Cup just to be tourists and play 3 games. We go into the World Cup to take points away from each of our opponents and qualify for the next round. So the nation is very excited, and you can see the belief of the whole nation. They comparing the game as the Bible story of David against Goliath, a small nation against the giants of Germany. So that's I get in the goosebumps. That's how the nation is prepared itself, standing all behind the team, because we are convinced that we're going to reach the second round, Blair.
Well, you'll be the David in every match that you play, starting with, as you said, Germany on June 14th. That game's in Houston. It's June 20th that you come to Kansas City and play Ecuador. Have you been to? Have you made the trip to Kansas City yet? Have you visited here?
No, not myself, but my team has. So we have a project team that is preparing for the World Cup for the federation or for the team. And actually, last week they were in Kansas City visiting the stadium. They were also in Houston, and yesterday they were in Philadelphia. So we have visited all the cities. We have our base camp in Boca Raton in Florida. And Kansas City is a lovely city. A lot of similarities with Curacao, the jazz, the food, the culture. So looking forward to visit your lovely city, Blair.
How many fans do you expect to travel with Curacao during its World Cup adventure here? And let's just continue June 25th, as you said, the Ivory Coast and Philadelphia. So Houston, Kansas City, Philadelphia. That's the path for Curacao. So how many fans do you expect to travel?
Well, our main sponsor, which is Gregorian, which is an airline, and they also have hotels. They have 6 charters for the first game, Blair. So that means almost 1,800 fans from the islands traveling to Houston for the first games. And I know other airlines from the Netherlands will fly fans too. And I know Curacao will be like a Cinderella story where the world. I hope most of the stadium, because we try to make that happen, most of the stadium fans will be in our Blue Wave jerseys and to cheer up for the underdog, because we will definitely be the underdog of the World Cup, and not just the underdog, but the underdog that can show the world that we can really play football.
We're speaking with Gilbert Martina, who's the president of Curaçao's National Football Federation. And Gilbert, I think sports fans in America know your country for baseball more than anything else. How about Andrew Jones just making the Hall of Fame is a native of Curacao, and Kenley Jansen, the pitcher, is from Curacao as well. Soccer, I'm not saying it's been taking a back seat in your country, but it wasn't the sport that Curacao was known for. So that presented, I guess, a challenge for the country to get soccer up to a level of World Cup status. What were some of the challenges in building the soccer federation?
Yeah. Actually, soccer used to be the #1 sports in the 70s, 60s, with Curacao. Then it was the Netherlands Antilles, all the 6 islands. We used to beat giants like Mexico, Costa Rica, or Central America. But it was neglected due to the federation because we did not develop with a modern organization structure and governance for football. For soccer, that was neglected, Blair. And actually, I was involved since 2000, 2005 with finding funding and sponsors for the national team. And 2 years ago, the local football clubs asked me, Gilbert, would you like to postulate yourself to become president? Because we need someone who can bring peace, order, structure into the federation, because the federation had been through some challenges and turbulences. At that time, I was still CEO of the local hospital, Curacao Medical Center, and my wife, which is my queen at home, said, "Hell no, don't even think about it, because you have a very busy job already as a CEO, and now." But I was dreaming already about the qualification. I could see Curacao qualify, so I let it rest, and then I went back to her, and we agree on the certain terms. And to answer your question, what I have done, Blair, is actually a governance that installs confidence internally, but also confidence externally to the head coach, to the players, bringing about sponsors, that we really going to a process of change with the federation, where the federation will clean its debt, and federation is doing stakeholders management properly, because soccer is all about managing your stakeholders. You have the local clubs, you have the sponsors, you have the community, you have international relations. We just signed a MOU with the Dutch Soccer Football Federation, which is the first time in the history. So that is what I have been doing since the election last April, Blair. Governance for the peace, for the structure, and for financial stability, which is essential. It's very easy. We have a saying on the island, the fish starts to rot at the head. So if the organization is not well, the body is not well. So when you organize everything properly at the federation, and you have the calm, you have the structure, then it will reflect on the pitch, not the other way around.
Well, and part of those responsibilities lately has been to find a new head coach, which has happened. Tell us about that situation. You lost your head coach for a personal reason, and you had to get a new one.
Yes. Well, that's also a divine story, because actually Mr. Fred Rutten, the one appointed in 2023, he gave me his word that he's going to be the head coach. I'm talking about June 2023. I was in the Netherlands. I talked 2 hours with him, almost 2.5. And he asked me one question. He said, Gilbert, why does Curacao want to convey this journey? And I explained to him what this would mean for the islands, for our local players, because we have exported so many players to the Dutch national team, Blair. Patrick Kluivert, the Timber brothers who are playing now, you name it, just because there was not a path for them to ever dream that they could play at the highest level as a soccer player. So I explained that to Fred, and he said, Gilbert, I believe this story, and I'm going to be the new head coach, June 2023. Then 2 weeks later, he called me and said, Gilbert, unfortunately, I have to decline the offer because I'm not feeling well. And if I'm not feeling well physically, my head is not proper. So, and then I asked me, who can you advise? And then he said, check Dick Advocaat. And 2 weeks later, Dick Advocaat called me, Gilbert, I heard that you are looking for a head coach. I'm available. So that's how Dick came in. And now 2.5 years later, Blair, Dick has to step back due to medical reason of his daughter, and Trent is stepping in. So for me, that's a very powerful sign that the circle of life has been completed.
Gilbert Martina, the president of Curaçao's National Football Federation, is our guest. You touched on something that I wanted to ask you about, and that is, I was looking at the roster, and just about every player on the roster was born in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And I noticed, if I'm pronouncing it right, his name correctly, Tahith Chong?
Tahith Chong is the only one that was born and raised on the island, yes.
So just explain how the Dutch natives make up a great part of the team.
Yes, actually, Curaçao and 5 other islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Saint Martin, Saba, and Statia, we are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So we have the Netherlands, we have Aruba, Curaçao, and Saint Martin as 4 autonomous countries. And then the 3 smaller islands, Bonaire, Saba, and Statia, they are a municipality of the Netherlands. So we have the same passport as the Netherlands, Blair, and according to the rules of FIFA, a player can switch from country A to country B as long as he has not reached the age of 23 years. And if you reach the 23 years and you have paid for country A and you want to switch, there should be a period of at least 3 years between the moment you have paid for the Netherlands, for example, and you want to go back to play for Curacao. So due to these rules and the requirement that mother or father should be from the island, or grandmother or grandfather, due to those requirements, all those players are ineligible to play for Curacao, because most of them have been waiting, hoping for a call to play for the Netherlands. Some of them have been playing for the Netherlands. For example, Bazoer, who has been called now in the selection, has played 6 times for the main team of the Netherlands. He has played the European Championship with the Netherlands team. And while he was not elected anymore, because the flow and availability of players from the Netherlands for the Netherlands selection is huge there. That's the challenge. I mean, for a small island and a player, you should be extremely good to be elected to play the Netherlands. So why not choose for your country, for your own country, where the chance is much, 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 much higher? And now that the path has been opened, that we have reached the World Cup, they really see that it is possible in the CONCACAF zone to do that. So that's the inspiration, and that's the beauty of this story.
Your book is called Healthy Minds, Healthy Nation. Tell me how the message of that book applies to this fabulous World Cup birth.
Well, it's very, very powerful story, my own story for transformation, and that is what I've been doing actually for sure the last 24 months, the last 2 years, but for sure since April last year when I was elected, to focus on the potential that we have with our mind, because we can create psychosomatic diseases, Blair, with our mind, but we can also create psychosomatic health. So, and with that thought that everything is possible, there is no limitation. Once we start doing what we do based on our true purpose, not based on our ego, but based on our true purpose, then the magic happens, because you then start co-creating with the universe, with God, whatever name, the cosmos we want to give it. And that's what I was been installing within the team and the coach and the World Federation. Not put ourselves first, but put the general interest. Put the team first, put the country first, put your purpose as service for a general service, and then you can see when magical things happens. And that is what we have seen on the pitch. Because if you talk to, for example, vote members before and after, who were the players, and the players also tell you that, Gilbert, since the new board came in under your leadership, it is a dramatic change, because you definitely did bring peace, order, and structure, so they could really focus what they have to do, which is playing soccer. And from a perspective of hope and belief, and you know that the sky is the limit.
Well, the sky has been the limit to Curaçao's World Cup quest. Let's end it on this. Is Curacao ready for the world's largest sporting stage?
Doing our best behind the scenes. We will be having a test in Australia, the FIFA series. We will be playing China, which is also David versus Goliath, because a tiny island in number play against one of the largest countries in the world in numbers of inhabitants. So we have China on March 27th, then we have Australia on March 31. We have Scotland on May 30th in Scotland, Hampden Park. And then we have a faraway day on Curacao against Aruba. And then we're traveling to Bogota for our first game. So yes, we will be ready. We will be ready. I have full confidence in our new coach, Fred Rutten, because he is tactically a coach that put attention on all the details. Almost 20 years younger than Dick Foucault, which means that the energy level also is much higher. And he has formed a staff with very qualified assistant coaches, with everyone a specific talent to reinforce the team. So we will be ready. The 2 games in March will be a good test for him to see where he stands. And I'm very glad that I could have the opportunity to strengthen the federation and the team with a vision of what a healthy mind can do, not only for the individual but also collectively. Blair.
And of course, and of course,
Next week, March 17th, my book will be launched on the island at the caves of Hato, also a very special place. From the first inhabitants of the island, actually the Arawaks Indians from South America, and also the slaves living on the island were using that cave. So I did choose that location for a very specific reason, to enlighten the consciousness of the island, that once we start putting our gifts and our purposes for general interest, magical things can happen.
and GilbertMartina.com, I believe, would be a place where
www.gilbertmartina.com. They can follow me. I also on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook.
Very good. So June 20th in Kansas City, Curacao will be here to play Ecuador in their second World Cup game. It'll be fantastic. The smallest country by population and size, qualifying for the world's biggest tournament. Gilbert Martina, thank you so much for joining us and talking soccer with.
Thank you very much, Blair, for the opportunity. And we will see each other in Kansas City to eat some of your world famous barbecue.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. The men's and women's Final Fours are set, and a rising star on the men's side was playing for Shawnee Mission Northwest last year. Illinois' Keaton Wagler was named the most outstanding player of the South Regional. He's just a freshman, and he'll lead the Illini into their semifinal game against Connecticut on Saturday. I also can't wait for the other semifinal, Arizona against Michigan. On the women's side, all 4 number 1 seeds advanced to the Final Four for the first time since 2018, UConn, Texas, South Carolina, and UCLA. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff of Gabriella Lacey, Irvin Zhang, and Suzanne Hogan, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.